Hello and welcome to the Anyone Can Play Guitar podcast,
which gives you, the listener, a series of hints and pointers on your journey as a musical artist.
providing you with interviews from those in the music industry, along with our own experiences.
Ben and James shine some light on the many pitfalls and opportunities that being a musician has to offer.
Last week we were at the Cluny in Newcastle with Paul Langley talking all things photography, where we covered the importance of a good photo, why to use a professional, and what musicians should consider. This week we're at the Cumberland Arms in Newcastle with singer-songwriter Willy Mason. Here we discussed intimate venues, songwriting, recording, and building relationships.
Hello and welcome to episode 23 with me, Ben, and him,
James.
Oh, now, this one, James, is a bit similar to the Roddy one, Mark Morris one, and that. Someone I've listened to for a long time and was very excited for. I'm very excited for all of them, as you know.
I was tired as I ran.
Yes, you did, and I think I mugged you off a little bit on Instagrams.
Yes, you
commentating
did.
About your...
Hey, that was a quick time to get from where I got to there due to metro delays.
And it wasn't actually the distance, it was the terrain as well. It was slippy, and there's a lot of hills in that bit.
Well, yeah, and steps.
Steps.
Go over a motorway.
Oh, I thought you meant the band. You had to get past them. Get out the way, Faye. Get out of the way, H. I'm coming through. I'm going to see Willy Mason. Imagine that.
I don't know what's worse than that the joke, or that you can name at least two members of Steps.
Well, H isn't hard to remember, and Faye lives around here, doesn't she?
How? I have no idea.
Someone from work knows that. Yeah, it's true. True facts. Anyway, that's besides the point.
Steps
yes.
Revelation.
I don't think I can name the rest of them.
I'm not buying that.
Nah. So anyway, for a different type of artist, Willy Mason is who we met this night at the Cumberland Arms, which is a different venue in Newcastle. It's a smaller venue, and we get into that, don't we, about the two worlds he lives in, really, musically. He's production world, he's record company world, and he's doing it himself world.
That's a good way of describing it, two worlds. They are fairly reasonably different, really.
Oh, definitely.
I mean, from playing the bigger venues, I've seen, what did he say? He played to 16,000
yeah.
people by himself on a stage, to playing the venues like this intimate tour, which probably 100
maybe, yeah.
Ish.
Cumberland's not that big.
Yeah. Good venue, but again, stark contrast to
definitely
other venues that he can still
and I
sell
think
out.
He was doing a fair few nights on this tour. I think it'd be near the end of it now when we record this, more or less. But I suppose if you're coming across and you've got a couple of people coming across and you're doing, I don't know, I think about 20 dates, it's definitely going to pay for itself.
Oh.
And if you sell a bit of merch on top of that, but why wouldn't you go and do a tour across the world and just hang out and play your tunes? And we talk about atmosphere of the venues and why the smaller venues or the more interesting venues are good. Yeah, why wouldn't you? I first got into Willy Mason on his first album, which is which you'll hear in the episode. I had a memory blank on Where the Humans Eat.
I think I prefer that to when you just randomly say any old title that may or may not be true. Exactly.
But a friend of mine from work, Dan Baxter, name check just there, he got me into Willy Mason and I think you'll like this, Ben, and he was right. Because it was on an iPod, but if it was on a CD, I hammered that to death, because it's just an album for all occasions.
Right.
Yeah. And then when the second one came out, If the Ocean Gets Rough, it
can do.
It can do. But I like that one as well, because you can tell the sound's just a bit bigger. There's a bit more money behind it, but it's still Willy Mason. It's not like it's all lavish and all completely different and like, who's this? It's just a little bit extra.
Well, and part of what we get into is his songwriting process and the recording of songs as well, which was exceptionally interesting.
Yep. In we go.
Willy Mason at the Cumberland Arms.
Welcome to the podcast, Willy Mason. Upstairs in the Cumberland Arms in Biker.
In a lovely room.
In a lovely room, yeah. So we're talking before halfway through the tour. How's it going all right?
Yeah,
so
going
far?
great, yeah.
Yeah. And is this tour put together by yourself, or is it through a company? Or
Yeah, this is myself and the bass player Marcus Hamblett,
right,
who's got a little label called Wilcoming Records and plays in a bunch of different bands.
That's cool.
So he kind of, between he and I, he helped me pick out of the venues and
cool.
Hired him out.
So the Cumberland, for people who don't know around here, is quite an intimate venue. Was that a conscious choice?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yep.
Why is that?
Smaller shows are a lot more fun.
Yeah.
And the venues tend to be more interesting.
Right.
And also it makes sense to do now for myself because I don't have a record out at the moment. I'm not doing any kind of big push.
Okay.
So when I'm during an album cycle, at least for my last 3 albums, I've been on a major label. Mm-hmm. So they tend to work in a whole lot of promotion around the album cycle.
Yeah.
And then in the spaces in between, I've got a bit more freedom, and that's when I like to try doing things a little differently.
Okay.
What makes the smaller shows more fun for you?
I mean, for the kind of show that I do, it's there's not any kind of big spectacle really, mm-hmm. aside from the music. So I think it comes down to, a good show comes down to sort of a unified feeling in the room. So it's a lot easier to get that with a smaller group of people. You know, you can still see everybody, and it's just the energy's a bit more condensed.
Yeah, totally
distilled,
agree. Yeah.
You know.
I like your point about smaller venues being more interesting as well. I think
that
when
too.
you get to sort of academies or university, a lot of the rooms can be very similar and
those chain venues, you know. They're built for a very specific purpose.
Yeah.
You know, whereas somewhere like this, I mean, the pub downstairs, and it's just there's, I don't know, history. And
well,
atmosphere.
It's definitely been here a while, the Cumberland.
Oh
yeah. Cool. So if we just go back a little bit, you did a lot of your early stuff with self-production.
Mm.
What was one of the main reasons why you did that?
Well, I guess, you know, I grew up like right around the time that home recording got very cheap and accessible, and so, but even then, my dad's into music and recording and stuff, so and just tinkering, you know, so that I was always into recording as just its own kind of art form.
Right.
So I did a lot of that growing up, and then into my first album was, you know, we actually did it. It was originally going to be a demo session, and so there was no fixed plan, but just being in the room and being familiar with the process, I was able to make some magic happen, and they decided to keep it, you know.
Yeah.
How much of a plan do you have today in comparison when you... So you say no fixed plan back in the day.
Right.
How does that differ to now when you approach things?
I mean, I've kind of kept that for each album, actually. It's more like the way that I've always approached sessions is kind of setting up the pieces like they're dominoes, and then just get in there and see what happens, you know. So it'll be, you know, the thought goes into choosing the studio and the engineer and the musicians and the instruments in the room if there aren't a bunch already, you know.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I like having just a bunch of, like, you know, just kind of setting up the palette, and then from there it's I like creating in the moment as sort of a collaboration with whoever else is there and whatever instruments are there. Just kind of have it be totally flexible to react to whatever the sounds are that are coming out, you know.
That's good. Yeah.
Interesting you mentioned the palette, Tim, because that's come up a few times when we've been speaking to musicians. So is there certain almost colours or paintbrushes, if you want to extend the analogy, that you would want in the room versus sometimes it's, well, if it's there, I might use it. You know, how much of that's pre-planned versus whatever's there we'll use?
Well, so my first album, the studio we went into just happened to have lots and lots of really fun things to play with. And so then I didn't really think about it, and then my second album I turned up and there wasn't really anything.
Right.
And I really missed it a lot, you know.
Okay.
So now I at least try to just make sure there's a bunch of things that I've like, you know, never used before.
Right.
Whatever it might be, you know.
Right.
And
So
preferably a xylophone, which is like one of my favorite. Although
You get a nice tone, don't you?
yeah, you can overdo it. Like I've ended up trying to put it in places where it doesn't belong.
Yeah. Well, we did that, didn't we? We always went to the similar studios just around the corner, actually, and we would always find stuff that the engineer had, and we'd thought we can fit this in. We could never fit it in, but we tried our best.
Right.
So, those first early productions, was anything daunting about it, or was it just a case of jumping in? Because I'm trying to think of how I would approach it.
You just making the album?
Yeah, or your demos, like the self-production side of it.
I mean, usually when I'm doing my own stuff, I focus on the rhythm, I think, first of all.
Okay.
You know, and everything kind of builds around that. And, you know, after that, it's just about, like, to me, it's a little bit of a process of, like, sculpting, or, like, you know, where, you know, I'll lay down the guitar and maybe a vocal and some rhythm, and then in the process, maybe a mistake or just, you know, there'll be like a little hint of something that'll be like a melody line or a rhythmic hook or whatever it might be, and then I'll go in and sort of try to emphasize that a bit with other instruments or overdubs, and then I kind of work like that for the most part.
Oh, so
And sometimes then I'll be going along and I'll feel a build happening and then want to continue that or have it go somewhere, so I introduce a new element, a new rhythm, syncopation, or another instrument or sound. You know, just kind of sculpting and structuring it how it might be. Like I don't spend a whole lot of time thinking about getting the perfect sound.
Yeah.
You know, and that's why I like working with an engineer, because then they can worry about that. For me, it's more about like the arrangements and emphasizing things and keeping the song flowing however it's supposed to be.
Okay.
How many sort of tracks or layers will you typically have on any one song that you do? I
mean, I usually don't go over, like, you know, if you can count like a drum set as one track,
yeah.
You know, I don't usually go more than like 8 layers.
Okay.
Well,
you know,
yeah, that's cool actually. Yeah, because when I re-listened to the albums today, just because, and that's actually 8 layers. It sounds very warm and loud for 8 layers. So is there anything
and which one is this you're talking about? Carry On?
Well, I listened to both When the Ocean Goes Rough and first album as well this morning.
Cool. Sometimes, you know, it can sound like more is going on when there's less layers.
Yeah.
In a way, because each thing has a bit more distinction and emphasis, you know.
Okay.
Like a lot of productions I hear now, there's just so much going on, it kind of ends up like sounding just like a block of sound, you know. And so you're not picking out like, oh, there's a piano or there's a whatever.
Yeah, it's quite interesting as well, because a lot of bands, when they remaster stuff and you pick up the sounds, I quite like it when you don't know exactly what it is. And then when you pick it up, actually, that's a keyboard. You think, I had it in my head, it was something else, like a xylophone or glockenspiel or whatever.
Right.
So yeah, that's.
Yeah, but I like that.
I think there's a grey in between.
There's a lot of over-engineered things, I think, as well. And like you say, just one block of sound as opposed to being able to pick up the nuances between different things.
Yeah.
That kind of fits in on the other things I've got written down there. Recording at speed. A lot of your stuff being recorded quite quickly, especially in the early days. What do you think the advantages are of doing that?
What do you mean?
Like your first album, I read somewhere it was recorded in 3 to 5 days.
Oh, right.
Not like that.
Oh, that kind of that was like tape speed.
No. Sorry, no. As in like the process. I know the White Stripes do something similar. They used to do something similar, recording like 7 days. Is there any particular reason for that, or?
I mean, it's just the process, you know.
Right.
I mean, they are like basically pop songs, so like they don't require that much, and in terms of arrangement and performance and stuff, you know. And so I just try to do the minimum possible just to keep everybody loose and keep it spontaneous, you know. Try an idea. If it doesn't work after 3 takes, scrap it, you know what I mean? Or keep one, you know, with a couple mistakes. But I don't like, you know, laboring over a performance
All right.
because I just find that it starts to take the life out of it a bit.
Yeah.
It sounds forced or something.
Yeah.
It's hard as a performer to do something over and over again and still give it like a lot of feeling.
Yeah, I was listening to an interview with Paul McCartney, and he said something similar. When they were doing Band on the Run, they got all the tapes stolen, and he said, if it's good enough, I'll remember it again. So it's quite a similar type of thing. If it's good enough, I'll remember it, even if it's not written down or recorded.
So with that word, so even if you had this, what you viewed as an amazing song, and you went in and recorded, and the first take no good, second take, third take no good, would you still just scrap it, even if it was this song that you thought was really amazing?
Yeah, actually, like that happened with one of my songs, Into Tomorrow,
right?
Which I originally tried to record for the first album, and finally it ended up coming out on my third album.
Okay.
But we tried two different versions of it, and neither of them were really working.
Right.
And I think part of it too was maybe I hadn't sung the song enough.
Right.
So I hadn't quite mastered it.
Do you ever test drive your songs live? Do you think?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that?
Yeah, usually. Yeah.
Before.
Yeah, it's great to play them at least a few times live. The only ones I don't do that with is when I'm like quite shy about them.
Right.
Or, sometimes there'll be a song that I haven't quite figured out how to perform it, what the guitar should be like, or whether it's, mellow or excited or whatever, and so then I'll finally figure it out in the studio.
Okay.
And then translate it to the stage, but it's makes a big difference being able to play a song in front of an audience a bit in terms of getting to know your way around it, knowing which parts to emphasize.
Yeah, I suppose you get that feedback, don't you, straight away. Yeah.
Is there any way or anyone that you trial things with before you even played it live? Is there someone that you might sort of bounce a song off, whether it's privately or
Sure, yeah. Yeah, I usually, play songs for friends or family or whatever and try it out. And there are a couple other songwriters that I'll, bring a song to them if I'm if I'm stuck on the bridge or something.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Or I don't know if it makes sense enough, if the story is coming across or, whatever.
Okay. Yeah. Another person, when we were speaking to Kath Williams, she was talking about something. People would often go to her to say, right, I'm stuck at this point of a song, whether it's a bridge or whatever, I need a transition or I need something to get to the next part of the song, and they'd go to her with that. So it's interesting to hear that someone like yourself, seasoned songwriter, would still sort of...
Sure.
Yeah,
it's like anything, any creative pursuit,
Yeah.
It's nice to have feedback if you...
Yeah.
If you got people that you trust.
That's the key bit, yeah. The best thing...
But you can't trust anyone you always got to keep your own opinion, too.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? If sometimes...
You are your best critic.
Somebody will say, all that part's not working, but it is working.
Yeah. You've got to believe in yourself, haven't you?
Yeah.
Half the time. You've got to back yourself, as they say.
Yeah.
Cool. So, spoke about self-production in the early days and the recording quite quickly. One of the things I wanted to note down is the relationships you built with people such like Zane Lowe. Mm-hmm. He was a really big champion of you across here, and that's how I found out about myself. How easy or hard was it to make those relationships and maintain that relationship with someone who's going to champion you so well? Did you reach out to Zane or did he find you?
In the case of Zane Lowe, he found me.
Yeah.
I think he might have heard about me from John Kennedy.
Okay.
And then he was at South by Southwest, saw me play a set, and so on, And then he loved the song so much that he just started playing it, which was quite amazing, because I'd never even been to the UK. I didn't have a record label over here, and the fact that a Radio 1 DJ can just start playing tunes like that is kind of amazing to me, coming from the States where
you had a lot of license back then.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Is it fair to say that there was more sort of chart commercial success in the UK versus back at home?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it sounds like that came about just from sort of playing live and someone picking up on something, and then certainly Zane back here in the UK running with it.
I mean, it was kind of incredible the way that it happened for me. you know, just it was through the radio. You know, it's not something that I could like recreate. I think the way that why it worked for me is because the song was really strong.
Yeah.
You know, and so it was like, it was recorded on a Radio Shack microphone, like straight to a CDR.
Yeah.
And actually, you know, and my singing isn't that great on it. The fidelity's not that great, but it was just the song itself, you know, found its way, and like it was one that like just resonated with people at that time. And so, you know, since then, like it's all about the relationships that I've built up. In terms of enjoying touring and making music. When I first started touring over here, I didn't know anybody, you know, and so like I ended up signing a record deal fairly quickly. So I had a few, you know, colleagues at the label, but everything was really challenging because I was experiencing it for the first time, and I didn't have people to say, oh, like the sound at that venue stinks, or like, you know, work with these musicians, whatever.
You're quite young as well still.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking for a lot of people today, it's so much easier to record something and get someone in another country to hear it. Albeit maybe it's not at scale en masse, but you know, you could build up a small following theoretically in another country far easier than you could in days gone by. But I'm just interested for any band artist today, say if you've got a number of fans in another country, it's not like you're just going to suddenly jump on a plane and go and play in that country.
Right.
Was it a case for you that for a period of time you had potentially more fans in the UK than you did back home?
Yep.
Right. So how did that work for you? I'm just intrigued, and I'm guess if you were playing sort of back home to whatever sort of audience, but then you had potentially other side of the world,
bigger audience,
a big chunk. Yeah. What did that feel like, and how did you then approach? Well, part of it, I guess, was getting on a plane and coming and playing in the UK. But what else did you do to sort of cultivate that following in a different country?
I mean, well, it felt exciting to come over here and have that. But I didn't know how to prepare for it. And I mean, I hadn't done much touring in the States even. I knew how to put on shows and stuff that I'd done at home. But my experience was like fairly limited, so I just turned up and did what I did because that's what people wanted.
It was the best thing to do, you know?
But the shows have definitely gotten better and better as I've learned ways of, you know, working on my guitar sound, you know, my stage sound and everything, and learning how to sing with a big sound system as opposed to at home. All that kind of stuff, you know.
So how do you, because I've seen you at the Clooney, just down the hill, and I've also seen you in Northumbria University, which are two different size venues, aren't they? How do you, and obviously tonight we've already mentioned how there's an intimate venue here. How do you prepare for the bigger gigs, the bigger shows? Because I'm thinking of when we were playing, sometimes we get a good support slot, for example, on a bigger stage with more people and bigger lights. Is there different preparation you do for that?
Mainly just the set and the band.
Yeah.
You know.
Just go for it.
Yeah, just go for it. And, you know, I don't know if it's necessarily true. Like, the instinct is like, okay, the stage is big. Let's get a really big band together and, you know, big amps and stuff like that. But sometimes less is more, even in places like that, you know. I've played to 16,000 people by myself, and it actually went really well, but that was a sit-down theater.
Right.
You know?
You came.
So then for bigger, like, you know, stand-up shows, festival shows, stuff like that, you know, you just try to keep it a bit more exciting, I guess, because that many people in an open space, you know, they want to have a good time.
Yeah, definitely. yeah, totally. I'm just looking at the time there, and I know the first band are on soon, so you don't want to catch them. Anything else you've got on your list there, James?
Well, I was going to say we've touched a bit on building relationships, and obviously, like you said, sometimes you play solo, sometimes you play with a bigger band. How have you, over the years, gone about selecting? You know, we've talked a bit about colour palette as well, and who you want in the room. How have you gone about selecting those that you work with or have in your band when you're playing?
I mean, for years and years, it was just, musicians that I'd grown up with.
Right.
I knew really well,
Yeah.
And now, I've toured with so many different bands. I met Marcus when he was playing in Laura Marling's band, and I was opening for them,
Yeah.
And we just kind of hit it off. By the end of the tour, he'd play a couple tunes with me every night,
Right.
All right.
So I met quite a few musicians that way, and recording, people who come in and out of the studio, or sometimes if the producer or the studio engineer has some musicians that they work with, I think there's so many good musicians over here, and in the States too. It's just kind of having the confidence to ask somebody if they're if their playing speaks to you, then give it a shot. And luckily, the way that I go about it is I don't look around for a musician with a specific style or sound or even instrument in mind.
Mm-hmm.
It's the songs I feel like are flexible, and they benefit from having different interpretations.
Mm-hmm.
So that gives me the chance to work with a lot of different musicians.
That's good.
The biggest difference between playing in the US and playing in the UK?
I mean,
we're not meant to ask this difficult question.
I don't know. The beer's better over here.
Good answer.
Good answer, yeah.
I'll take that.
Yeah. Brilliant. So, like I said before the interview, one last thing we do at the end of every interview is just highlight a charity or good cause, just to highlight it and get some word out there, and to put the links in the show notes. Is there any particular one that you want to highlight for this episode?
Love.
Well, everyone needs it.
Yes.
Well, some said that's all you need.
Yeah.
Supportive love.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, brilliant. Thanks very much. Enjoy the show tonight.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of the tour when you get to Ireland as well.
Thanks.
First question. Who's Tim?
Tim.
Yep. I noticed it in the interview, but I didn't mention it. When I re-listened to it today, you go, you call Willy Tim?
Tim?
Yes, you did. As you said, Tim. I just have to bring it up.
I need to check this out.
Look, I was listening to it going, he did say Tim? I didn't imagine it.
Tim?
Tim?
Who would I have been talking to who's a Tim to allow for that to work?
Don't know. We don't know any Tims. And he's called Willy for a start.
Well, that's not Tim.
It's definitely not.
We've not interviewed a Tim.
No, we haven't.
We don't plan to interview a Tim. Well, not consciously.
No.
God, there must be a famous Tim musician.
Tim Wheeler from Ash.
Right, see, yeah, Tim.
Mm-hmm.
Get him on.
I'm trying.
I'll call him Willy.
Close the circle on. Anyway, getting back to Willy Mason. And just to counterbalance, you can ask me, Ben, why is everything so cool? Because I was saying cool a lot.
Ben, this isn't the first episode that you've done that.
I know, but I noticed
I'm surprised I haven't brought this up before.
Yeah, I'm just counterbalancing the Tim comment with the cool comments. Maybe I was just trying to get in the cool vibe that was there today, because Willy was
I think
cool
it was
dude.
because you were speaking to someone from America.
You know what it is? I thought, I might as well have my shades on and everything. But you might be right. You might be right. So first things first, we spoke about the tour itself and the smaller venues, and we mentioned that beforehand. Now,
Fun.
yeah, fun. There's you said the atmosphere of the room.
You don't just need a bouncy castle for fun.
No, that's a callback.
Callback.
But it is. It was the last episode. Don't move your head like that. Yeah, but it said it's all about the music and the room. So when we were talking about it before the actual interview, I can see why someone would do it if you make a bit of money out of it. Let's say he makes a couple of thousand out of the tour.
Well, enough to keep you going.
Enough to keep you going and have a good time. But yeah, if you've got these rooms where you can chat to the audience, you can talk to them beforehand, afterwards, during. You don't have to. I bet there's a lot less pressure as well, because if you're playing, I don't know, like an academy, which we mentioned, and you've got 2,000 people there. A lot of them will just come to hear Oxygen or Save Myself or another hit, and they'll be. But these fans will probably notice the gig came out before anyone else, and that's why the tickets probably sold out within no time at all, because there's only 100 of them, and they'll be like, "Yeah, play like 10 of your B-sides, and tell me why." If you haven't played Oxygen, that's all right, but chances are I probably will. But why that for like an emerging artist or a new artist who are trying to get out there and get like that get the deal or get whatever they're looking for? That's creating a bit of community around your band, and then they know the stories. So if you do make it big, you can go back to these venues and have these same conversations about remember when. And it's just that whole. It's creating a community and like the interactions with fans and just doing it for the love more than anything.
Yeah. Well, it's similar to the Mark Morris situation where you could tell he sort of enjoys that interaction that you get from the smaller intimate shows.
Yeah.
And you can create, I think Willy said about creating that atmosphere, it's a lot easier to get that sort of experience out of a smaller gig compared to the bigger ones. And he enjoys doing them.
So why not? Yeah.
Why not?
So in the interview, I think we consciously took it back a little bit about when he first got started, and the conversation actually reminded me a bit of the conversation I had with Mike, made by Mike Pedals, and the recording element of it, as in he just got the stuff and just thought, I'm going to work out how this works and see what I can do with it. And it just so happened to be, I know we'll probably mention the song Oxygen again later, but it just so happened to be this song that was magic in a bottle, and it just...
Well, there was a few things that I found interesting about that. I mean, firstly, when you were saying his sessions for the first album were originally just going to be some demos.
Yeah.
It wasn't like he'd specifically gone in, he had this body of songs, and he was recording these to be the album. There was another bit about when he was talking about how Oxygen was just a really strong song. However, he doesn't think his singing was particularly good on it, or there was some other things with that song which he was like, nah, it was all right, but just the song was strong and it carried.
Yeah.
And then the bit that I really found interesting was when he goes into the recording rooms, studios to do that. He has no sort of fixed plan.
Yeah, I jotted that down as well.
He just sort of goes in and sees what comes out of it, sees what will happen. If there's instruments in there, he'll use them.
As long as the glockenspiel's there.
Yeah. I was like...
Pop quiz. What's the glockenspiel? Is it the metal one or the wood one?
Metal.
Correct. You know why? German, Glock, metal. Xyla is wood in Latin. Ding, 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 ding. Anyway, sorry, I cut you off there.
Oh, all right, Johnny.
Johnny Greenwood actually was the person that not told me, but I heard it on a podcast. There you go. There's a Johnny connection.
I'd imagine it's the sort of thing you'd know.
It's no surprise.
Oh, no.
Hello!
Dear, oh dear. Right, where was I? So, I was at the point of... So, he's gone into the recording studio, and in essence, he doesn't know what's going to be in there. Right now, in my mind, and this is clearly where me and Willy Mason differ.
Yeah.
If I was about to go and record some songs, I'd make damn sure that whatever I needed to record those songs was going to be in that room. I'd have done my song. I'd have all the component bits. I'd know all the layers, everything that's there, and then whether it's a xylophone or whether it's a thunder tube or whether it's a whatever, I'd make sure that they're all going to be in there. Now, on the one hand, that makes me extremely prepared and ready to do what I need to do. On the other hand, I would probably miss out on the more spontaneous, creative sort of thing that might be, well, you know what, I don't really have a plan. I've got some songs, going to just go in and have a play around, and then, ooh, there's an instrument I've never come across. Let's make some noises with that and see if it goes. And you might screw a load of songs up by putting just noises in that really don't belong there, but then there'll be one or two which say, bang, that's just totally nailed it, or brought something completely different.
I think that's a similar point I had, but in just a different guise. So he obviously has a relaxed nature, And in his demos, which became like half the first album, there was this song which propelled him into the artist he has now. So it's a formula that works for him. And in the initial ones, he probably was planning to spend, I don't know, a month, 6 months, a week, just hammering out songs and see what happens, because you've got the time luxury, and that kind of a luxury that he's kind of had a little bit more since making it through. Whereas yourself, you're right, you didn't have to just have to get the song ready. You had to shepherd Rob, shepherd me, shepherd Simon. That's a bit unfair on me, not the other two. Book the time in, pay for it. Whereas he had a lot of equipment to work from, so I can see why it's different. That's quite interesting. Why I quite like talking to a collection of different artists.
Yeah, there's no right and wrong.
Yeah, so we've got in the podcast. Obviously, we've got the businessy side, we've got the fandomy side, like the theory side of it. We've got the artist side of it.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether we picked this. It was before the interview with Willy. We were saying him and Mark Morris do the exact same job. They're on a stage singing to people, but how they got there, one in a band, one solo, one from America, one from London area, is completely different. But fundamentally, they have 6 strings on a guitar singing songs about love or loss or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's good because there might be someone going, well, Mark Morris does this, well, I have to change. But then they listen to Willy Mason and go, I do exactly the same as Willy Mason. Maybe. So there's no right or wrong answer. You're totally right. But you're also right with how we approached it. We went, right, we've got 2 days, which is 400 quid. We want to do song 1, song 2, song 3, song 4. And if we can, this other one. Rob, play the drums. No, play them better. Right, done. Simon, you're up.
Yeah.
Whereas he goes, right, I've got my engineer.
It's more of a military operation than a creative. Like, you've done your creativity prior to going in.
It's almost like doing a play. You rehearse and you rehearse and you go in. Whereas Willy, which I think was brilliant, because I would love to have done it, but just different circumstances. Again, he was 18, 19 when he recorded. You've got that luxury of time. Again, we mentioned it in a previous episode of you don't know how much time you've got when you're at uni.
But then he learned from that experience as well, in the sense that, well, the second time he went into a studio and all of those instruments weren't there, and he really missed them.
Yeah.
Because again, if you go into a studio for the first time, you might just expect, there's loads of instruments. That's what a studio looks like and is. Therefore, you go into the next one and you just expect that they're there, because that's your only experience. Yeah. Then you go, oh right, they're different. All right, so if I want those things, I'm going to have to make sure they're there, or go to a place that I know that has stuff. Or the other thing that I don't know, I was going to say it blew my mind. That's probably overstating it a bit, but if he's got a really awesome song that he truly believes in, is absolutely brilliant, but after 3 takes hasn't laid it down properly, then he'll be like, no, suck it. It's not happening. And initially, as it came across in the interview, I was like, what, really? Even if it's like your best song? But then it totally made sense what he said. If you're onto the 19th recording of trying to sing it, it's going to sound, you're going to be sick of it yourself.
Yeah.
So that's going to come across in the delivery. So it totally makes sense that either you would just park it for that session and come back either the next day or the next week, if that's a possibility. Or the next album, yeah. But yeah, to just keep at it, like, and get onto the whatever nth recording, I can totally see how that then just sounds forced and laboured. And
if you've spent a full week doing it, you might have recorded 3 other songs which were 20 times better in at that time. And again, if you're spending money in recording studios and you're literally writing as you're going, maybe that's where that comes from. And we did talk about how he writes really quick and records really quick.
Yeah.
But I found it really interesting as well.
Not at neck break speed.
Yeah, no, yeah. But also that other bit which kind of linked to what we were talking with Catherine Williams about, where she hears a certain rhythm in like something going over a bit of concrete or a bit of like something in the road. If he does a mistake in a song and goes, actually, you know what? We'll explore those 5 notes, and it just turns into something else. I thought it was really interesting as well, and we mentioned about the colour palette of the studio. He goes in with, he's got the studio, he's got the engineer, he's got his musicians.
And I know we're still only on episode 20 odd, but for that to have come through 3 times already. It's clearly a thing, from established established musicians working with different people, different sounds, and making sure there's certain things available. If they're trying to create a certain song, they'll make sure their palette's stocked with the right equipment, musicians, whatever, to achieve that sound that they're going for.
Yeah, but I also think there's a little bit of flavour to it, as in if he does turn up at the studio and there isn't what he's expecting, of working within your means, and sometimes that's really good. Like what with Nick Helm, setting those boundaries, as in, I don't have a piano. Really thought I was going to have a piano part. Let's try it on a xylophone or glockenspiel or whatever. Yeah,
and that comes into you'll generally have no more than 8 layers or tracks to each song. Now, if you think that, say, one's drums, one's bass, one's the main guitar and one's vocal, as a minimum, that only leaves you with 4 other...
Yeah, you might have a rhythm in there as well. You probably will have a rhythm guitar in there.
Yeah, a backing vocal, that's not a lot of additionals, and I like Dee's point about the fact that can really help you pick out certain sounds, because you've not overlaid stuff to it becoming just a wall of noise, which again could absolutely is a valid way of doing it for a lot of bands, but for him, he likes to keep it reasonably stripped.
8 layers. I remember watching a programme, it was because I really like, as you can quite imagine, songwriting documentaries or programmes about the process, and it was, of all people, Jim Core from The Cause, and one of their songs had 64 tracks on it.
Wow.
And he went, I don't know what these 2 are. So he turned everything down and turned them in. Oh, that's SGs, yeah. The 2 Gibson SGs. And then you just listened to it and went, oh yeah, it's only about 8 bars in the chorus, just to lift it up a bit. I was like, that is blowing my mind. You've got probably about a 500 to £1,000 guitar used for essentially 24 seconds. 3 times. Yeah. So...
And again, there's nothing wrong with that approach.
Not at all, because the Cause have sold a lot of records. Because they're catchy little numbers. But it's just, again, it's like how we approach recording, how Willy approach recording, how the Cause approach recording, how Willy does his gigs and all that sort of stuff. And it's really good. There's no set roadmap.
Yeah, well, there's one thing just going through my notes there that, and it sort of ties into the sometimes if it hasn't worked in those 3 times, often part of the reason it hasn't worked is he's just not sang it enough. And that instantly resonated with me. I remember, I can't remember the song, but there was one point where, again, as you've described, we went to the studio to record 4 tracks or whatever, and we obviously felt like we really needed to go in and do these 4 tracks for whatever, to get whatever EP out for whatever was going on.
Yeah.
And 3 of them, nailed, but there was one of the 4 that we just hadn't necessarily played as much, or it was a newer song. And it's just, I guess from my point of view, it was knowing how to sing it. There's certain bits that you'll emphasise, or you haven't got your breathing right, or there'll be something that you're just not used to, and then you're almost thinking more about that and not focusing on what you're singing. And so definitely think there's something in not going to record a song until you've at least played it and sang it a good number of times beforehand.
So there's one last thing I want to just talk about, which was it's quite useful, obviously, for our people listening in bands or artists who are emerging, and that's when something happens, that little spark. And for him, it was Oxygen and Zane Lowe picking it up, and him becoming bigger in the UK than he was in the US.
That's got to be nuts, knowing that you're sitting at home in your home country, and there's a massive fans the other side of the world.
And you haven't even got a deal there.
But you could play in your local venue and there'd just be a handful of people. That must have been a bizarre time for him.
Totally, but I think it's also, it's like, you can't really prepare for it, but it's when it happens, and we've mentioned this in the Shopman episode, of just going all in. Right, I'm going to get on a plane and go to England, meet up with Zane Lowe, and
it's building relationships. That was the key thing, wasn't it? Because even today, I mean, he still plays in the UK a lot because he's still got a massive fan base in the UK. It's making sure that, right, who's going to help you book those venues, because the first time you do it, you won't know of the Cumberland Arms type venues. Yeah, you can pick academies out of a internet search, not a problem, and you could book those sorts of things. But all of these other venues, like a Clooney, for example, in Newcastle, that you wouldn't necessarily know about if you're not from the region per se. So having the right people and also musicians as well. So if you wanted to have a band on,
or support,
or whatever it is, then building those contacts up to allow you to play that, because it's so. Even when we were in our band, it was easy-ish for us to get a small following of people right across the world. Now, we never got to the point where, I think we've mentioned before that there might be 3 fans in Rio or 2 fans in Milan.
It's a long way to go.
So we were never at the point of getting on the plane.
One of them was busy at the time as well.
to do that. But it just shows, that like today it's even easier to get a lot of fans or people in other countries. But it's one thing getting those fans, it's another thing to then actually be able to turn that into a series of gigs in a country that you've never been to, potentially, let alone, played in.
Yeah, definitely. I suppose if you're going to, as well as you say about knowing the right people, if you've got a song like Oxygen out and it's doing really well, and you speak to the wrong person, just book all the academies out. And you get there and they're half full, and you think that's a lot of wasted time and money where you could just go to the smaller venue, or you might be going too small. You're right, it's building those relationships and having those contacts when something happens. So, good cause of the week, James. Bit of a different angle this week.
Yes, Ben.
Yeah.
Love.
So, I thought about this, and obviously I don't know if anyone knows or whatever, but we do, every time we promote the good cause each week, and just put out a little donation that. So my good cause, James, you can pick your own as well. It's Age UK. It's a charity that I like. I just thought an opportunity to spread my own charity, Age UK.
All right. Well, you can show your love for that. So I think that's no bad thing, because I sort of I like I did like Willy's sentiment, really, of all the things and good things to promote. That's love is certainly not a bad one. But again, I think as part of the show, like you're saying, in order to keep spreading words about specific good causes that are where people are working tirelessly on, then Age UK, not a bad show.
Yeah, throw the love their way.
Indeed. So coming up next week, we're speaking to the multi-talented Jamie McCready about learning the guitar, covering self-study versus formal education.
We've reached the end of this week's episode of Anyone Can Play Guitar podcast.
Big thank you for tuning in, and remember to stop by iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts from and subscribe so that you never miss an episode.
While you're there, it would be amazing if you could leave a rating and a review.
All the show notes can be found at www.acpgmusic.com, and if you want to get in touch,
email us your questions, any feedback and any suggestions to info@acpgmusic.com.
That's it for now. Keep supporting upcoming artists,
and we'll catch you next time.